Hello, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to the presentation about the multifaceted power of music presented by Linda McIntyre. My name is Catherine Goss, and I am one of the directors for the Dance for Parkinson's program here in Australia. I am the Sydney coordinator, and I am also a teaching artist in the program. Before I go any further, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we are all meeting today. I am joining you from Gadigal land here in Sydney as part of the Eora Nation. I would like to acknowledge all of the elders from all the lands on which we are meeting, past, present, and emerging. Linda McIntyre is the founder and director of the New Voice Choir based in Queensland. New Voice Choir has been running since 2015 and was the first Parkinson's choir established in Queensland. New Voice Choir's repertoire includes original works in a multi-part harmony. Linda is currently a PhD candidate at the University of Queensland, and I will let Linda expand a little bit more on her research and tell you about that as I introduce her. If you have any questions throughout the talk, please pop them in the chat and we will get to them at the end. I'm going to pop myself away now and looking so forward to hearing about the New Voice Choir. Over to you, Linda.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Thank you. And hello from a very hot study. I should be upstairs in the quietest place in Brisbane, except it's wall-to-wall chainsaws and chippers today, I'm afraid. And I think they've just taken a lunch break and hopefully they'll stay that way for a wee while. So I hope you've been enjoying this wonderful festival so far. Now, as you've probably picked up, I have Parkinson's myself. So if I lose the odd word or my train of thought, you're going to understand. That said, I do not trust myself to deliver off the cuff, especially without the advantage of being up on my feet or conducting a choir or just generally pacing around the house. So I'm going to be reading most of what I'll be talking about. I have a background of composition, arrangement, performance, and teaching. Once upon a time, I had a really large private music teaching business. I can still teach just as well, I think, but the constant processes and pressures that come from running a business just do my head in now. So that's the end of that. Moving straight on to New Voice Choir, otherwise known as MVC. The choir, as Catherine said, was set up in 2015 by Elaine West, whose husband has Parkinson's, and by me. I'd run plenty of other choirs over the years. Some auditioned, some not. But the big difference with MVC is that it's not only non-auditioned, but we welcome people who can't even sing in tune. It's my job to worry about that. Most of our members do have Parkinson's, but we also welcome partners, carers, and supporters. Our byline, in fact, is celebrating people with Parkinson's and their supporters, and that is precisely what we do. New Voice Choir is never about what we can't do. It's all about what we can do. So it's Parkinson's choir, but that doesn't mean I make things easy. It's often quite the contrary. The fact is, I sit in a very interesting position within MVC as an experienced musical director, a teacher, a composer, and a person with Parkinson's. All sides of the fence, possibly right up on top of the barbed wire on occasions. And I'll keep doing this for as long as it's feasibly possible for me to do so. I've always approached NVC just as I'd approach any choir, to be challenging, extraordinarily so at times, and fun. Working like this ties in very strongly with a philosophy I have regarding my own Parkinson's. I absolutely detest being put inside a box and labelled patient or person with Parkinson's. Parkinson's waits for no man or woman, and I've found that many of the best ways to make things happen that benefit me in the here and now involve dreaming up opportunities that directly benefit others from the wider Parkinson's community. And then, crucially, we make those things happen. I won't surprise anyone listening here today by commenting on the social advantages of a Parkinson's choir. The warmth, friendships, the caring community that we've formed are incredibly valuable. We didn't even stop during the COVID shutdowns. We ploughed along via Zoom and continue to do so whenever it's necessary. Technology is advancing, but it's yet to really suit a choir rehearsal. With technical issues such as all the different bandwidths, every single time on Zoom, I need a section of the NVC to sing together, I have to hit mute, meaning I went through 3 entire teaching terms in 2020, never once knowing if my choir was singing in tune. But that aside, even the social aspects of a Zoom rehearsal were better than nothing at all. If you can hear scratching, I'm very sorry, it's the possum in my ceiling. Sorry about that. To the more technical side of the music, I create practice tracks for everyone. Without those, choir members won't practice, well, not much between rehearsals, and particularly won't remember the details of new work that we've been covering at rehearsal, and nor will they simply do that oh so necessary regular voice work. As a general rule of thumb, where music is concerned, and please note, I'm just talking about music, what's good for a non-Parkinson's choir will usually be good for a Parkinson's choir, and very much vice versa. Therefore, the way I approach NVC from a pedagogical perspective is not a whole lot different to the way I'd approach any choir. And it just flat out works. And so in no particular order, let's go through a few of those other features. Lyrics, they can be difficult. On the odd notable occasion, they may even be in a different language. Fijian springs to mind. I encourage choir members to gradually learn their lyrics off by heart. Diction is all important, more so or less so in certain songs to create the character. But there'll always be songs with lyrics requiring very precise diction. For example, for the rhythm of life is a powerful beat, puts a tingle in your fingers and a tingle in your feet. I often come away from a rehearsal speaking with very precise consonants. Breathing, one of the biggies. We do a great deal of work on this. And if there's a particularly difficult use of musical phrasing involved, therefore the breathing will be playing an integral musical role, not just one of best practice for Parkinson's choirs. I may even hand out a lyric sheet with bold lightning strikes wherever the breaths should be taken. And I teach it using some really silly exaggerations, just as I would have done in the past with any other choir. For example, instead of the usual Danny boy, oh, Danny boy, take a breath, the pipes are calling. My arrangement doesn't work like that, and it's a tricky one. So I make them do, oh, Danny boy, the pipes. The pipes are calling. I know, it's silly, it's funny, it works, and it makes things stick in people's heads. Now, voice production itself. Another of the whoppers, of course, with choristers often encouraged to project their voices and splatter the walls behind me. On the other hand, there are times when I'm chasing soft singing. Now, this might be just as challenging in its own way, requiring control, often sustained notes, and a different way to maintain the breath. And it all comes down to dynamics for the non-musicians, that is loudness and softness. Now, dynamic work can single-handedly produce, by my experience, some quite extraordinary results for people with Parkinson's, and often it will do so in a relatively short space of time. Pitching, as in singing the correct notes. NVC, unlike many choirs, sings in 3 to 5 part harmony. Why? Because we can. It's fun. It's extremely challenging. It's a completely new dimension, especially for those who've never sung in a choir before NVC, let alone a harmony choir. There's a whole new cognitive dimension involved in learning to sing in harmony, especially when we're talking of multiple, often complex parts. Rhythm. Some of our songs involve complex, exciting, difficult rhythmic work. There are sometimes cross rhythms between the vocal parts. Syncopations may abound, e.g., and I'm just going to make this up off the top of my head, instead of having an arrangement that goes dum da da dum 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 dum. I might choose to go dum da ba da da ya ba da da da. Why not? Again, why? Because it sounds good, it's challenging, and it's one heck of a lot of fun. And I guess too, I know how to teach it. Now, I've discovered by watching Parkinson's choir members who've been with us throughout a period of years, this rhythmic side of things for me is particularly interesting. There aren't many studies out there that specifically concern musical rhythmic ability in people with Parkinson's. Some that I have come across propose that a person with Parkinson's sense of musical rhythm will invariably, no ifs and buts, go downhill as the illness progresses, regardless of what work they may be doing on it, especially in those who have no formal musical training. Now, at the risk of sounding a little controversial, I'm not so sure that that's correct. When rhythm is targeted and it's musically challenging, in fact, I hammer it right from the word go with a new piece of music. And I continue to do so as the rehearsals go by, as we learn that complex new song little by little. I don't see anything going downhill in a sense of musical rhythm over a period of years with people who actually have Parkinson's. And just quietly on the side, I seriously think this bears further study. And finally, as if all of those factors aren't enough, I make them read music, and not easy versions of music. Now, I'm not trying to turn them into sight readers per se, but they learn to follow the shape, the curves, the angles of a line of notes. And in addition, it's not just the music. There's a line of lyrics to follow. There's music terminology in there, including dynamic indications, breath marks, and so forth. It is a whole world of cognitive challenges. Now, where do we go from here? It depends on COVID, masking rules and the like, and it would be nice to start booking a few gigs. NBC is ultimately a performance choir, and it's been a very long time since we've been able to do a gig. 2022 may be the year for it, I hope. And it sounds like an awful lot of hard work, but I have to finish off by saying we laugh and we laugh, and then we laugh some more. And I don't know how we get so much work done, quite frankly. Now, we're going to give you a little chunk of our choir video, which the resource is there on the website. Erica Rose, I think, will tell you about that at some point. We would like you to listen to this, just the first 9 minutes of our choir video. There are another 10 minutes with interviews, which we'd love you to watch later on. But we're just going to start you off with these first 9 minutes, and then I'll move on to some of the UQ work I'm doing.
Great, Linda, thanks so much. I'm going to share my screen, and you can see where this information is. So we're going to go over to the resources. And so if you prefer to watch the link directly, this is where it is, or we'll watch it together.
Welcome to the New Voice Choir, a very special choir for people with Parkinson's disease and their supporters. I'm Linda McIntyre, the musical director, and I also have Parkinson's. NVC is a non-auditioned therapeutic choir in Brisbane, Australia, whose members perform in 3 to 5 part harmony. Yet we accept members who may not even be able to sing in tune. Enjoy viewing what this wonderful choir is all about.
Me.
marching in. Oh, when the saints go marching in. Oh, how I want to be in that number. When the saints go marching in. Oh, when the saints go marching in. Go marching in. Oh, when the saints go marching in. Oh, how I want. Oh, how I want. How I want. Okay, we're back up. So I'm just going to carry on now, if that's okay with everyone, with the other part of this little chat. What I'm doing at UQ, particularly the section, of course, that pertains to Parkinson's. Now, for those of you who do listen to that and that entire video, you will notice in the interviews that carry on after that bit we just got to, there's a final interview with me. And I say rather cynically, well, I wonder if the University of Queensland will let me back in to restart a PhD. Well, they did. So thank you, UQ. Again, I'm very grateful. Now, as a classical composer, I'll be producing a folio of works that will include a symphony, which is being worked on now, and later on an opera, as well as other things. And that's the plan. However, there's a Parkinson's twist on this now. A study of how my own downward sliding Parkinson's affects my composing. Now, as it's all turned out, possibly it's also how my composing is going to affect the Parkinson's, which wasn't something I was expecting to involve originally. Now, you must understand that classical composition is both deeply mathematical and deeply creative. It has both processes involved in it. And to the best of my knowledge, no other composer with Parkinson's, living or dead, has been studied in this same way across a span of years. And in my case, it would be for most of the span of a PhD. Now, it could be a depressing thing, yes, but someone has to give it their best shot, and so that's what I'm going to do. On the other hand, let me tell you a story. A couple of years ago, I volunteered myself to present some new music I'd written, a couple of pieces, in front of professional musicians, teachers, and other composers. To produce by the deadline, I had to take a whole pile of music that was already in my head and was perfectly clear, crystal clear in there, and I had to get it down on paper. Easy peasy, no problem, thought I. Except it wasn't easy. I was horrified, beyond horrified. I could not take this complexity of music that was in here and get it down onto a piece of paper. I did not know what to do, because was this Parkinson's? It just has destroyed me as a composer. That's the end. Can't go forth, can't compose anymore. This is my soul. Either I acknowledged that I could no longer compose, which to me felt like the biggest failure possible, or I treated it as no longer, that's just not an option. I have a very pig-headed side. And so I grabbed this huge pig-headed side of myself and I put my head down and I started work, because that damn Parkinson's wasn't going to get the better of me, not in this part of myself. At first, despite hours of work, I could only truly reach flow state for a few minutes at a time over a day of maybe working 4 to 6 hours. And I wasn't having that. And I was so slow, so abysmally slow. But every day I went back to it with my pig-headed self, and I pushed myself that bit harder. And gradually the hours lengthened, and most importantly, the trance-like flow state within those hours also lengthened. In a nutshell, I did this for 9 weeks in total, straight through. I finally allowed myself to take a day off after 6 weeks of this had gone by, 7 days a week, and then I just took the one day off. I don't think I took another one off until I'd reached the 9 weeks. The days, they built slowly. They built to a daily 10 to 12 hours of work at a minimum, with perhaps 6 hours of real flow state within there. Some days, towards the end, 15-hour days, I can recall a couple that hit 18 hours, just whoosh, straight through. That was it. No breaks. I stay in that trance-like flow state if I can truly reach it. I stay there even to walk upstairs and get a drink of water or go to the bathroom. I just stay in it. Now, before I started this crazy pig-headed regime, my Parkies was giving me a fair bit of trouble. the physical trouble that it was giving me. My legs would freeze mid-stride. My balance was way off. Both of these things were really downright dangerous at times, especially walking downstairs. Tremor was increasing, you know, various bits and pieces that had me concerned that I was heading towards a drug increase. Now, during those 9 weeks, especially as the hours and the intensity increased, I barely moved. I sat on my backside for hours and hours on end, day after day, week after week after week. Now, when I work like that, the only parts of me that move pretty much are my hands, occasionally using a pencil, perhaps a little bit of notation of what I've already worked at with pencil, then writing it into a computer program. My eyes move constantly. I don't know what that's about, but they just never stop moving. I can feel them moving all the time. But other than that, I'm like a statue. And after weeks of working like that for hours and hours and hours at a time, to my utter gobsmacking astonishment, oh, here comes the bird. The Parkies' physical symptoms began to pull back. It felt as though I just spent weeks in a regular, physio-directed, formal rehab program. How can this be? How can it be? I was blown away. Zero physical movement for weeks on end, just intellectual work in a deep flow state for hours at a time, every single day. And Parkinson's physical symptoms went screaming into unmistakable reverse. There was no drug increase, by the way, after any of that. This is not a figment of an overactive imagination. I'm not exaggerating anything. This is exactly what happened. And this is the very reason why I cannot help but wonder what on earth the compositional part, the main part of my PhD, is going to turn up in respect of hitting back onto my Parkinson's. All I can say is I am keeping a completely open mind on this. So that's the gist of it, of what I'm doing at UQ. So I guess that means I'm moving on to questions, if anyone has anything.
Thank you, Linda. What a fascinating, it was so moving hearing those beautiful voices. Wow, what wonderful, wonderful work. While I just wait for some questions, perhaps people are going to pop them up in the chat. Perhaps you could just tell us a little bit more about what sort of, where do you perform when you can perform, when we're not in our COVID world? What sort of venues and what presentation would you perform on?
Okay, that's quite an easy one, Catherine. It depends. We do a lot of community style gigs. So, for example, there's a local library over at Corinda that would have us back every year for their Christmas Carol gig in the library, and they just invite as many people as they can, and we all have a huge sing along, really. Other ones we might we try, you know, roughly once every teaching term we might pop out and do one of the local aged care homes, which always goes down very well. Other times we're invited to much more formal gigs. There have been other times where people have tried to, you know, raise money for us very successfully. For example, in an art gallery opening, we performed in that one. So we will just about do anything. We're not fussy in that respect, but and we do a nice range of things when we perform. It covers our what I call concert pieces in our multi-part harmony. It will invariably cover pieces that we invite, you know, we hand out lyrics and get the audience to sing along, and we have our sing-along pieces. So yeah, and a piece that the choir hates, which is where I make them all do these actions and these, you know, and they get totally twisted. I teach that to the audience and torture the choir with it, and have a lot of laughs with that as well.
Oh, that's fun. That's fun. Just touching back on harmonies, we have a question from Melissa who asks, do you have any tips for how, for a much smaller group of singers to tackle the harmony singing? Is there any quick tips you could give Melissa about how to tackle the harmonies in the smaller group?
Okay, can I just ask what's we're talking about in a smaller group? We're talking about 6 people or, 24 people? Or...
She doesn't specify. I'm sorry. Maybe Melissa could put it back. Quick little thing in the chat.
And it depends too on your size of the number of harmonies. So whether you're in 2-part or more parts of harmony, for a start, you try to keep your same group of voices doing yay part each time, just like in a normal mixed choir, you'd have SATB, soprano, alto, tenor, bass. So in my setup for NBC, because it works for us, I'll have upper and lower firsts, upper and lower seconds, and upper and lower thirds when I choose to split them. The thirds are my boys. So I don't do an SATB because it doesn't work for us with our voices. So if someone is a lower second, they are always a lower second. So they won't have to be confused by jumping parts in different songs. They'll always stick to that one part. Also, if I had a small group of, say, 12 people and their community group, as opposed to, semi-professional singers, I would never split that. I think I wouldn't split that into more than 3 parts at most, because the more people you can have singing one part, the more it supports that part and the more confidence you'll give to the people within that part. There's an old choir director's trick where you might have a choir with some really, really good singers in it, and then you have someone who has a little bit of trouble holding pitch. You'll plant that person inside a group of strong singers, because those people around them will help that person to stay on pitch. And I do the same thing when I have a newbie come into the choir. I might have decided they're an upper second, and I'll sit them there and I'll put people I know are strong on that line behind them, so they sing into that person's back of their head and their ears. But in terms of getting people to remember their harmony parts, it all comes down to making those practice tracks that I spend a lot of time creating. And the practice tracks are specific to each choral group, each choral sectional.
Oh, that's fascinating. Melissa just added just then about 10 to 12 people she has. So I think that's probably covered that answer. And I think the music people in the audience will know what the technical terms were you used in that little answer there. So as a dancer, I'm absolutely fascinated what you were talking about, that mindfulness and that complete absorption without any physical movement. I think maybe could you just expand? I'm just fascinated by that, because as someone that moves for a living and has all, I think that obviously the mind and the body kind of they just kind of work together. How long is your PhD? And I know that you've gone in with an open mind and heart, and that's fantastic. Have you made any, apart from your own discovery about your physicality was better, is there any little somethings that you have found along the way yet?
No, not yet. I've only officially started at the begining of July.
Okay.
I'm a brand newbie. That's why it says in that video, if they'll let me in. But
oh, I see. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. So I'm working on this symphony at the moment, but and the PhD itself is on the narrative of trauma, which wasn't something I was looking to do, but apparently that's going to work rather well, and it's rather topical, but that's another story. But the flow state and the stillness, I have to say, not all composers do this. Not to the extent I do. It's I do have an oral gift, and I can drop into this part of myself. And although it was very slow to make it start working again for me, I did get it cranking after, weeks and weeks of working on it with that pig-headed phase, because I wasn't going to let this beat me. And I've realized that the one part of my thinking that Parkies hasn't attacked yet is this part of myself. Although it slowed it down, it's like that part of my brain, I don't know why, but I have this picture of it in my head with a concrete cylinder, like steel reinforced concrete cylinder, that part of my thinking is inside. And Parkinson's as yet hasn't got through. I just can't, beyond that, it's a very, very difficult thing for me to describe how it feels. I hear music. Some people hear music in color. I do attach color sometimes, but mostly I attach shape and texture, and music becomes multidimensional. So I go inside sound. It's all around me, and I can touch it. I can feel it. It's all got, I mean, I don't have to put my fingers up. I can feel it. It has texture and shape and multi dimensions.
Yeah, fascinating. That's good. I love that image that you're inside it looking around. That's a beautiful image.
Yes, I see it. Yes.
Yeah, that's really gorgeous. What could you could just Erica Rose asks what would be an early musical memory for you? Like, what started you out on your journey? Was there something like, was it an epiphany, or was it just something in your family, or?
Well, I was adopted from birth, so there wasn't music in that respect. I didn't come from a musical family, but my mother did actually decide to get me started on music because she wandered out. Back in those days, she'd put kids in bassinets out under a tree to sun. And I was 9 months old, apparently, under a bassinet sunning. My dad used to have the radio on in the house, you know, with music playing at times. My mother sent my father out to check on me, and he came back white as a ghost, and my mother thought I must be dead or something. What's happened? And Dad said, oh, she's out there humming under the bridges of Paris.
Really?
So, yeah, and so I got started on music finally when I was 5. I just turned 5. I got started on piano accordion, which was bigger than I was. But, yeah, and even they didn't want to take me on because of my age. But, yeah, that was my first instrument, yeah.
Oh, right. So how many instruments do you play as a matter of interest?
Flute. Well, flute was the next one. I started when I was about 11 or 12 and ended up in training orchestra, training youth orchestra as a principal flautist. I thought I was going to do flute at tertiary level, but I didn't. And then, you know, then it was piano. I didn't start piano until I was 15. And then bits and pieces other than that. But the point is, if you're a composer, in theory, you have to be able to play those instruments, every single instrument, in theory, if you're going to write for it properly.
Well, that's interesting, because that, yeah. I guess as a choreographer, like moving it to my world of dance, because not all good choreographers can actually do the steps either, but they see like it's that whole, you know, you were talking about being in it and seeing around it, so you can kind of see how the notes will play on the music, you know, on the notes and things like that. I think choreographers kind of see how that transpires and can put it out there. So I think there's, yeah, that's absolutely very, very long. I mean, music's so important to dance. You know, we dance to music. It's, you know, dance is rhythmical, and music does something to the soul. I think it inspires us, like even just, you know, the radio. I think there's something that touches deep inside us, and we have memories. They evoke such beautiful memories for us as well. I think, you know, there's lots of songs from my childhood that I hear on the music and I'm thrown straight back, you know, years and years. And
of course, yeah.
Oh, it's very powerful. It's very powerful. So one more question before we finish, from Erica Rose. She would just like to know a little bit more about the symphony you're working on. That would be lovely. So what is that exactly?
It's called, I can give you the title. It is entitled capital D, small a, small m, exclamation mark, damn. And it is about how it feels when land that has been generational, and I'm sure a lot of Indigenous people will know exactly where I'm coming from, but in a bigger way. But when land is generational and is taken from you to build a dam, a public dam, the destruction that takes place when you've known every single branch on every single tree, and it's destroyed, and it's all pushed into great mounds, and matches are thrown in, and it burns for weeks and weeks and weeks. It is it's a traumatizing experience. And that's what it's about. It's going to start with what was there before. It's going to move on to what was happening during the destructive period, and it's going to the final movement will be coming out at the other end. I cannot write a traumatic piece of music with that trauma narrative unless I'm out the other end and I'm thriving. I cannot do that. I just don't want to go back into it. But I can go back into it when I've come out the other end.
100%. That sounds like a very powerful piece of music. I look forward to hearing it very much. Well, I think we're at time. So unless, Linda, is there anything any other little...
No, I don't think so. I think that's that was me in a nutshell.
It was so inspirational. Thank you so much. As I said, that power of music, and I look forward to perhaps one day hearing you live at some stage when we're allowed back up beyond the border.
Thank you. It's been a real honour and a pleasure to have the chance to talk about this. This is the first time I've actually really spoken about the PhD work related to Parkinson.
Oh, fascinating. Well, I look forward very much to that study as well. Yes. So thank you so much, Linda. I'm sure people will go and look up the New Voice Choir. You have the website. And
oh, yes. May we add the website onto those resources, Erica Rose, please?
Yes, we will do that. And so if anyone listening would like to go and find out more about the New Voice Choir, please see the resources and, make yourself familiar and perhaps even come and join. That sounds...
Absolutely.
Yes, that would be great. Oh, that's lovely. We are on a 15-minute break now. So it's time for a cuppa and a little quick stretch of those legs. And we are going to come back. The next presentation is Creative Aging and Performance Opportunities in Diverse Contexts by 4 amazing arts makers. So if you can join us, then we would love to see you back. And thank you once again, Linda. Really fascinating and so inspirational to hear you talk.
Thank you for that opportunity.
And a big thank you, Linda and Kathy, for this really moving and inspiring session. And we'll look forward to seeing you when the live stream continues.